Greetings to all of you. My dear sisters and brothers and my dear friends, a warm welcome to all of you from your Pastor Yeti. A new devotional study in the greatest stories of the Bible. And today we are Tuesday and going to talk about beliefs. Imagine a young couple standing at the front of a beautiful decorated church building. The groom is wearing a magnificent tuxedo, and the bride is a vision in white lace. Their friends and families are gathered there, squinting in the candlelight, straining to hear them exchange their whispered promises. Now imagine the young man turning to his bride. He's written his own vows. He looks at her tenderly and says, "I want you to be my wife. But first, I have to make sure you're serious about this." So, after much thought and prayer and consulting people who I believe to be wise, I have come up with the following vow, which I make to you today in the presence of God and everyone. If you will faithfully wash my clothes, cook my meals, clean my house, share my bed, and bear my children, then I will marry you. Any young woman who would go for such a deal ought to have her head examined. The minister ought to call the whole thing off right there. The father of the bride ought to demand his money back. The best man ought to have a word with his friend. It's preposterous. A marriage is built first on a commitment to relationship and trust. Acts of service are done with that as a backdrop. It's not safe to marry someone without the context of a secure relationship built on mutual submission. It's the same in our relationship with God. The part about secure relationship, not the part about mutual submission. God does not give us the law as a condition for relationship. The law is a confirmation of a relationship. We don't obey in order to become His children. We obey because we are His children. You cannot obey your way into salvation because only perfect obedience would be enough. You obey God because you are saved. Obedience is your response to His grace. The ironic thing is, once you begin living in life of obedience, you find your life actually works better. God has set things up to run a certain way. Disobedience amounts to sowing against the grain of the universe. It's unnecessarily difficult. Then a really fascinating thing begins to happen. The more you obey God, the more you trust Him. The more you trust Him, the more you want to do what He says. Ultimately, you find yourself thinking the way He thinks, seeing things from His perspective. You find within yourself a desire to live out the will of God. And you no more think of breaking His law than you think it a good idea to break the law of gravity. A life of obedience begins to be only sane way to live. It is in fact a life of true freedom. As counterintuitive as it may seem, real freedom comes only as we submit to God's law. My beautiful people, there is so much a misunderstanding and a mistranslation of what freedom really means. And as you were listening to the story about the guy with his vows, it's really sad, and I'm kind of upset about this because this can happen. Before you do this and before you do that, then. And it's just the wrong way. It is really a commitment to relationship and trust. And this is exactly relationship what we have with our Master, the Most High God. And indeed, the further we go and the further we move on in our journey with Christ, and we want to open ourselves to understand Him and want to obey Him, love will flow from that. So many people have a wrong understanding of obedience and discipline. If it is discipline in understanding as this, in punishment, then it's wrong. And that is exactly the same way in obedience. How can you trust a person if there is no trust, if there is no truly understanding and relationship? My dear ones, let the Holy Spirit give you wisdom and insight, because as much as we have friendships and dear friendships, as much as we have marriages, we need wisdom, trust, obedience, discipline, and so much more. But this is all given by the mercy of our God. If you fear God and you tremble, like we sometimes read it in the Old Testament, that is not a trembling that you run away from Him, but to understand in the full adoration and respect of who He is. And then you bow down in worship. And as much as you understand that in a very deep friendship or in a marriage, it's no slavery, because God set you free from that. My dear ones, may the Most High bless you in your morning, in your noontime, and in your evening. And when you lay yourself to rest, think about everything what you did in this day. Did it please God? Did you offer Him worship? And did you glorify His name? And did you open your soul when there was pain? And did you rejoice in Him and told Him what a wonderful day you had? This is all what we can offer Him back. And may the Lord bless you and the ones you love close to your heart. Blessings to all of you, my dear friends and my dear ones. This is your Pastor Yeti. Bye.